you were earlier also talking about in the episode about, the products not being able to keep up with the speed of how MITRE attack framework itself is evolving and new attacks are coming in and all of that. How do you maintain and evolve it over time, given that some products may be, falling behind in terms of these updates or these mappings from time to time? And if there are new techniques emerging, we are seeing new breaches happening every time, in fact, on a weekly basis. And then there are new techniques coming up. So how do you do that? And is there a tactical aspect to it where you're also building those use cases to implement for the framework?
Yeah. See, I mean, when you have adopted a framework, the maintenance is basically part of the continuous improvement process. Okay. And with each version that MITRE releases, there are new techniques that get added, new sub-techniques that get added. There are existing ones which get modified. There are certain techniques, sub-techniques which are revoked or are deprecated. Okay, so if I have to take an example and compare version 8, which released in, I think, 2022, and the current version 13. Okay, if I take these two versions, between these two versions, there are 85 new techniques which are added to version 3. There are 459 techniques which are modified. 2 techniques are revoked and 1 technique is deprecated. Okay. Similarly, I remember when we started working with version 7, there was no technique associated with, abuse of multi-factor authentication. That came only in version 11. And if you look back, certain, attacks that have happened in the last 3-4 years, you would see that multi-factor authentication abuse has been on the rise, right? And it makes sense that MITRE has added it as part of their framework. So definitely we have to look at what changes MITRE is bringing after every version. And I also want to highlight that MITRE has something called as MITRE ATT&CK Attack Evaluation Program. Okay, now this is the program where the security partners or vendors like Microsoft, CrowdStrike, or SentinelOne, Palo Alto, all of these well-known names in the security industry, they get their products assessed against certain simulation tests. Okay, and therefore it is important to make sure that we work with a partner who has their products, assessed as part of this Ingenuity, and have undergone this test, and they use the latest version of the framework. That's very important. From SIM perspective, like I said, we get the mapping for all the out-of-the-box detection, but we also have to make sure that they use the latest version, or at least N-1. And similarly, if we are making a custom detection, if we are building custom detections, then it is our responsibility to make sure that we map the techniques and sub-techniques correctly, and make sure with each version change, we see if there is any change and we remap it to the right ones. Now, a point to note here is that when security partners provide these mappings out of the box, what I have seen is these mappings are only at the technique level. They don't provide the mapping at the sub-technique level. So this is also something which we should keep in mind, especially when you are required to provide the coverage of your security control in your environment against the MITRE attack framework. It is important to note this and make sure that you give it at the technique level. Otherwise, you will struggle to give that to the sub-technique level, because the vendors currently don't have that mapping, many of them. Yeah. I think apart from these changes, we must also be watchful of new data sources, new campaigns, attack groups, and software which is used by attackers, because these are also getting added by MITRE in their versions from time to time. And therefore, if we are able to identify all these, I think the sustenance becomes very easy. So, I personally make it a point that whenever there is a release, I try to understand what are the differences between the two versions. So if there is a particular tactic, not tactic is more or less static, I would say, but technique and sub-technique which is undergone a change. I can go back to my security partner or vendor and say that, hey, you know what, this is something which is new that has come up. Do you have a capability to prevent it, to detect it? Okay, you can talk to the vendors and make sure that they give it as part of the product whenever the next version comes, or whenever they release those in the environment.